Hello and welcome to this Thoughts on Leadership. This one's called the leadership habit. I don't know whether you know it or not, but we create habits by the things that we do. They come very simply to us. If we do something repetitively, it becomes a habit. It's like you didn't know how to walk when you were born. At one stage it was a very conscious thing you had to do, and now you walk without even thinking about it. Driving a car. At one stage it was a very conscious thing you did, but by repeatedly doing it, you could now travel a journey, arrive somewhere and not even remember having gone through the journey. So we form habits by doing something repetitively, and sometimes we can do something repetitively without the intention of it becoming a habit, and then the next thing is that we're doing it, and we're doing it without thinking about it. The question is, do we realize when we've developed a habit? And a more important question is, what habits do we need to be effective? I mean, whatever we want to do, as leaders, we need to develop our ability to lead. So what habits do leaders need to develop? And here's another interesting fact. Once we've developed the habit, we can't just get rid of it. It's not like taking it and throwing it into midair and it disappears on us, or pulling it out of our body and letting go of it. You see, the brain doesn't understand the process of getting rid of something. It has to be replaced. So, in other words, if we want to get rid of a habit, we don't just get rid of it, we have to replace it. In other words, there's something that has to take its place for our brain to be able to compute or to understand exactly what it's meant to do here. So hence, people who try and lose weight or give up smoking, the real trick to it is find out what non-smokers do. Then you have the basis by which to be able to become a non-smoker. It gives you something to work towards. So not only do we formulate habits without realizing that we've formulated the habit, but once we've formulated it, it's not something that we can just get rid of. It's something that we have to actually replace and put something else in its place. So what are the habits that good leaders do? What do good leaders formulate in terms of habits? Well, in my research and talking to leaders, I've discovered that leaders find the habits that makes them successful and then practice them and perfect them. In other words, trying to just do what everybody else is doing, something I do may work for me with my team, but may not be as effective for you. And when I find what works for me and my team, then I need to practice it and formulate it as a habit. However, there's something we need to understand about this. A habit needs to be grounded in something. A habit needs to have like fertile soil by which it can develop, and without that the habit will disappear or be replaced, to be more precise. What do I mean by this? Well, if you have not got the right belief or the right value in place, then it's very, very difficult for the habit to be able to have fertile soil to grow in. So for example, if a leader doesn't like people, then their ability to create a habit of showing people that they care, that they empathize with them, that they appreciate them, etc., etc., becomes very, very difficult habit to develop because the fundamental belief is not in place. So as leaders, one of the things we need to do is understand what beliefs we need to create habits to be very, very effective as leaders. So what habits have you got? What habits have you developed without even realizing you've developed them? Or what habits do you need to be more effective? We should also be a little bit careful that some of the habits that we develop were actually a good habit at the time we developed it. In other words, it's something that was a pretty good principle to have, but we become too reliant on it or overuse it. Let me give you an example of what I mean. This last week I was at an event in a school, and I was outside a classroom, and I was listening to what was going on in this classroom. And the teacher in this classroom, every time a student did something that he perceived as wrong, incorrect, poor behavior or whatever, his immediate reaction was to throw them out of the room. No discussion, no conversation about it, no nothing, just get out of my room. And in the course of the time that I sat outside his room over the course of a 50-minute lesson, more than 50% of the staff had got, of the students had got thrown out of the room in that period of time. Now, I interviewed each student as they left the room, because I was interested in their perceptions and understanding of what was happening. Every single one of those students, every single one, said to me that it didn't matter how they behaved anymore because he wouldn't listen. So here's a teacher who has developed a habit that if misbehavior, probably the belief is that misbehavior needs to be dealt with, and so has developed the habit that if somebody is misbehaving, to send them out of the room. Now, am I saying there's something wrong in sending kids out of the room if they were misbehaving? No, that's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is it has become such a habit to him that it is now a pure reaction. It's like driving your car, you don't think about it, it's a pure reaction. Okay? And he is sending people out of the room without even considering whether there was an extenuating circumstances, whether he had perceived the situation as right, whether this was even the best way of dealing with this particular situation. It's just become a reflex action. And every one of those students was saying to me that they didn't care anymore because he wouldn't listen, and because he didn't try and understand, and because even if they were not in the wrong, he wouldn't listen to them and understand. And so they didn't even argue with him. When he said out, they just got up and walked out. And I said to one of them, who explained to me that they had what had actually happened in the room, and he said to me, and this is what the teacher saw, but in reality that's not what was happening. And so I said, well, why don't you explain that? And he says, what's the point? He will never listen to us. So you have a bunch of children, students in a secondary school that are missing out on an education because the teacher has developed a habit. Let's try and put it into a different context. Salespeople do this. I see salespeople who go into their sales speech just like it's straight off. They're right in there. As soon as they've said the first couple of words, they're into their spiel, they're into their line. Regardless of now what's happening around them and what's going on, they are now into their spiel. It's become just habit to them, it's rote to them, it's just straight off pat that they know what they've got to say. And now, is it wrong what they're saying? Is their spiel, is their presentation, is any of it wrong? No, not at all. But if it's delivered without a consideration of what's going on, in other words, if it's a habit that you get to this point after having said hello and so forth, that you now launch into your presentation, then there are going to be times that even the best presentation is going to be ineffective. So this is what I mean by developing habits that possibly even are good habits to have, but done in a manner without a consideration of what's going on around them. And that's how quickly we can formulate habits. So let's look at some of the habits and what leaders in particular can develop. It starts with your beliefs and values, as I said to you earlier on. So one of the things you may consider doing is saying, well, okay, if I believe people are important, if I believe that my business will not be effective unless the people perform at the best level they have, then what habits do I need to create to allow them to perform to the best of their level? What do I need to do in terms of a habit? So you may consider habits like acknowledging them, catching them doing something right instead of always catching them doing something wrong. Noticing their strengths before you notice their weaknesses. It's so easy to notice people's weaknesses. How about noticing their strengths and commenting on them? So those are habits that you can develop based on a good belief. If we take another one, if you believe that, if you have a foundation belief or a value, that planning and being focused is an important to the development of your business, then maybe you need to have a habit which is constantly talking about your focus and your plans. Maybe you need to catch people getting off focus and bringing them back into focus. Maybe you need to help them understand that everything they do, how it relates to the plan, how it relates to the outcome that you're trying to achieve. Those are habits that you may have to develop if you are wanting to believe that that is the right thing to do and achieve what you're wanting to achieve. One of my favorite ones is always, I personally believe that people should know where they stand with me. And that's something I've learned from some great leaders. Whether they like it or they don't like it, it's important that they know where they stand with me. People do not like not knowing where they stand with someone. So based on that, the habit is always to be honest with people. Always to make sure that they hear things from me and not from somebody else first, so that they've heard my way of saying it and they haven't jumped to the wrong perception before I have a chance to explain it to them the way that I want to. And part of it is learning to listen more than I talk, so that people know where they stand with me, and I can constantly be helping them realize where they are in relation to their dealings with me. So I've got some questions for you for this month. As always, my questions are there to challenge you. My questions are there to get you to think. I'm not accusing you of doing anything wrong. The question is there to just stop, make yourself think, and maybe ratchet yourself up to a new level. So the questions are this: what habits do you need to develop, and what values or beliefs do you need to have to give them a solid foundation by which to build them, to give them fertile soil by which to build them? Consider the habits that you would like to develop to be more effective as a leader. What habits have you got that you need to replace? Is there a habit, something that you're doing that you realize, hey, when I stop and think about it, that's just the way I behave without even thinking about it? And do you need to replace that habit with a new one? And if so, what is the new one that you need to replace it with? What habits did you used to have that you've now replaced with something else? This is quite an interesting question, because sometimes we can develop a really good habit, and then over a period of time, because of a situation arising, we replace the habit with another habit and then don't go back. I'll give you a quick example of that. A business leader I was talking to just recently, when I was talking to him, he was saying, but I used to be really good at listening to my people. I used to be really good at involving them. I used to be really good at drawing them out. And I've just realized that I don't do that anymore. And when he thought about it and we discussed it and we got down to it, he realized that there was a point in time when the business had to defend a hostile takeover bid, basically. That's what was happening to them. So it was a matter of time when he just had to get up and he had to just tell people, right, now you've got to do this, we've got to do that, and they fought off this hostile takeover bid. Through that period of time, a time of listening, a time of reflection, and a time for discussion was minimized because there just wasn't time for it. There was just time for action, move on, now do this, now do that. And now the hostile takeover bid situation has gone. They're back up and running. Things are going great again, except he's still got the habit of behaving the way that he had replaced the other habit with over that period of time. So we've got a man who was very good at listening and involving his people, who through a period of time replaced the habit and then just forgot to go back. And it wasn't until I was talking to him did he realize what he was doing. So what habits did you used to have? Habits that you had at the beginning that you have actually replaced with another habit for possibly very good reasons, but you need to now consider going back. So, some good questions for you to consider. As always, think them through. A good question I always ask myself is, would I work for me? And am I the leader I always wanted to be? And that's a good question to sometimes just pull yourself back and think of in terms of where you need to be. Have a great month, and I wish you all the very best. Bye for now.